in terms of what they were doing with Bud, TJ, we saw
They had Wormley out there.
Yeah, Wormley did it. We also saw Oladenny do it. The thing is this. So
Highsmith was playing a decent amount.
So this was the thing. So it wasn't that they were using them as inside linebackers. What they were doing is this. When you play the Titans do a great job of dominating the line of scrimmage. They do a great job of winning up front. And what that ends up doing, it first off allows Derrick Henry to get the ball and go downhill without having to chop his feet, right? So it forces your defense to kind of play on its heels and react to the action. By putting Bud and those guys at that, it wasn't even inside linebacker. It looked like it was almost like a 4-4, and they were just using a 4-4 like high school defense. So you just take one guy and say, you're the designated blitzer. And that's what they did, because what it does is it dents the line of scrimmage because he's getting a running start now, right? So by doing that, you pick a side. And I'm not sure, like, obviously you would have to go into the huddle for them to tell you the specifics of it. When I was here and we did it, we would typically do it more so in goal line situations, because that's when it was less likely to have any backfiring and stuff like that. Because from a coverage standpoint, you get kind of limited. With the Steelers, when they did it, they either played cover 3 or cover 1 behind it. You don't want telltale signs like that where a team can say, all right, well, every time this guy does this, it's either this coverage or that coverage, because then they can catch on to it. But the biggest thing is this. So when we would do it, we would say, all right, if you're the middle runner, right, or you're this pseudo just dynamite guy, right? Because your job is to blow something up. You don't have a run gap. You don't have a responsibility. Your job is this. Whichever way he steps, if the running back steps right, you fly downhill to the right and hit the first thing you see. If he goes left, you fly down the field and hit the first thing you see going left. What it does is it makes that running back see his color flash right now, and it makes him have to cut back. It makes him have to stop his feet. How many times do we see Bud dent it where he would dent the line of scrimmage, and that guard, even though that guard is bigger than Bud, because Bud is having that speed and force to hit him, it either stalemates or makes that guard take a step back. And then from there, Derek getting the ball, Henry is like, man, there's already a guy right here. I got to cut off of that. That minimizes his impact. We talk about Derrick Henry. He's not the best going lateral. His game is downhill, one cut, not having to worry about it. So that's why they implemented that. It was a great job by Keith Butler and Mike Tomlin of doing that. Like I said, you typically see it during the goal line element of it. You typically would see it goal line when it's a fullback out there as well, because we would say, like, you're the sacrifice guy, because a lot of times in the goal line, people wouldn't use their small fullbacks because you don't employ them. You use a D tackle, and that's usually a 300-pound D lineman, kind of like Henry Mundu. So what you say is, all right, man, your job is to hit him. Run full speed and try to knock him out before he knocks you out. May the best man win. We're going to clean it up after you. We just want to get that running back to stop his feet. That was the whole thought process behind it. And it worked for the majority of the time. I thought they did a good job with that. And all the guys that rotated in that position in particular, I thought they did a good job of communicating and making sure there were no mental errors from that person's responsibility along with everyone else around him. Because anytime you start doing one-offs like that, it can become a little challenging, because you're essentially telling now Cam Hayward, who's typically a 3 technique, right? Now you saw him bumped out playing more traditional D end, lined up over a tight end. But then from there, okay, well, now that means somebody else is going to be affected by that. And then obviously Terrell Edmonds, his role and reads are going to be different, because now you got an extra guy standing around you. So it's multiple people that are affected by it.
I saw him up a couple times too.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a lot of moving pieces with it. But the biggest thing is, like I said, it dents that line of scrimmage and makes the running back have to stop their feet, or at least see color and make them have to hesitate. And that's ultimately how you're able to minimize Derrick Henry the way they were able to do, man.
Well, dude, it goes back to your point, and I remember you bringing this up in the preview podcast, that Henry's main thing is straight line, just going back and forth.
He goes downhill, baby.
Yeah, as opposed to horizontally, that's where you could kind of, it's not his biggest strength.
Right,
we'll just say that. So it seems like those type of formations and that type of strategy plays into trying to just get him, going that way. Like, almost like forcing him outside of the middle a little bit.
Yeah, you want to force Derrick Henry to run left and right, sideline to sideline. It's some running backs you don't want to do that. Remember Chris Johnson when he was in Tennessee? He was a guy you didn't want going sideline to sideline, because he had the speed and the ability to beat you on the edge. LaShawn McCoy earlier in his career, he had that ability to beat you outside, so you couldn't just say we're going to play that style of defense. And I thought the biggest thing, I thought it was a good wrinkle by the Steelers, because watching the Titans through their first 5 games, they hadn't seen a defense do that. Defenses have played well, but no, they never took outside linebacker and said, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is your job. Force the action. That's why I say, man, I thought it was really good by the coaching staff, Keith Butler and Mike Tomlin, in that regard, because it's very unorthodox and at times it can be risky. Yeah. But they knew from a Tennessee standpoint, man, when they're throwing the ball downfield, they're not doing it from a traditional drop back sense. It's going to be out of play action. So even if you get caught in play action, now it just turns to a blitz. And you already got
which
to
happened a couple times. Yeah,
absolutely. So that's kind of how you play off of it. And granted, the Steelers have the personnel to execute that. With some of the teams that are 4-3 base, you don't really have those bigger bodied outside linebacker athlete types. You know, a 4-3 outside linebacker is drastically different than what Bud and TJ are. And then a 4-3 DN isn't going to be able to stand up and move the way that Bud and TJ can. So that kind of played into it as well. But ultimately, I thought it was just a great job by the coaching staff and by the players executing it, man.
No, for sure.